quite frankly. I'm worried about when the client wakes up and realizes they don't need us, because most sales reps are just friction.
You're listening to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience, a podcast dedicated to helping executives train their sales and marketing teams to optimize growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. Let's accelerate your growth in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience. I'm your host, Corey, and today I'm talking to John Barrows. He's a seasoned sales trainer and coach with more than 25 years of frontline sales leadership experience, and he's the CEO of JB Sales, a training firm serving many leading tech companies. He's trained some of the best performing teams across the world at companies like Salesforce, LinkedIn, Amazon, and Okta. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, Corey, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited to get into it. And first, I want to start with your journey. Like many of us, you kind of straddled that sales marketing line, especially early on, right? You got a degree in marketing, went into sales and marketing, and then quickly went the sales route. Yeah. I'm curious, was that always the plan?
Not at all. No, I had no idea. It was back when I graduated, which was way too long ago. There was no degrees in sales. So I went in college. I went from being an art major to an engineering major to a bio major to and I'd kind of tried them all because I didn't know what the hell I wanted to be when I grew up, and I still don't. But, marketing kind of mixed all of that together for me. Business, I figured, okay, I can figure out how to do something with that. But then when I got out into the real world, I realized I didn't really like any of the opportunities. And I also, without knowing it, kind of had entrepreneurial genes in me, and just the idea of working at a salaried job. I knew I wasn't always the smartest kid out there, but I always knew I could work harder than most. And me, that's why I was like a waiter and all that stuff. And I always kind of correlated, like, the harder you work and the better you are, the more you should get paid. So me sitting in a salaried position just didn't fit. And so when I kind of got into sales, it was a little bit of event marketing / sales. So DeWalt Power Tools was my first job. And it was sales, but it wasn't. Like, we just basically had to drive around, give away free tools to construction workers. And then if they liked them, tell them to buy them at Home Depot, right? It was more of like they were just getting started. So event marketing. And then I got into real sales when I got the job with Xerox. When I got Xerox, and I went through their 8-week sales training program. And that's really where I kind of got my sales education. And then kind of was off from there, starting in a company, selling it to Staples and having the fun, and then doing what I do now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that program at Xerox, that was kind of legendary back in the day, right? Was that real rigorous program?
Yeah, it was, but it was one of those things where it had such an incredible reputation. So it was this 8-week sales training program where you were supposed to go to, Rochester, New York. You sit there, you go through this whole thing. And then after that, you get like an apprenticeship. And then from there, you get into territory, but you don't really start, quote unquote, selling typically for like 6 months. Which I thought was fantastic. And quite frankly, I think we need to get back to. But because I graduated from that with not just understanding how to sell, but understanding a business, right? So, because I got to understand the marketing, I got to see into the finance, so my business acumen was a lot higher when I got out of there. And I think that's sorely lacking in sales today. Somehow, I guess I had interviewed pretty well for the position. And so right out of the gate, they threw me in territory while I was going through the training program. And so I kind of was like, yeah, whatever. Thanks, good. I got to get out there and sell because I'm quota immediately. And also I sold to the state and local governments too, which was brutal. So I sold copiers to state and local governments, which is about as bad as it gets. And I graduated. It was funny because I graduated the program top of the class, whatever. And fast forward, later on in my career when I was, interviewing for jobs, people were like, "Oh my God, you went through the Xerox sales training program, right?" And I was like, yeah, I did. I really had no concept of how revered it was. And by the way, I was the first year that they brought it local. So I didn't go to Rochester. They had it local in Boston. So I was kind of doing my territory and doing the training at the same time. So I think because it just kind of came natural to me as far as like solution selling, asking questions, not just pitching product and stuff. I think I did well. And then later on, I look back when I started my company after that, my first company, I was like, crap. I wasn't the start. I was the fourth person. Two of my friends had started the company and they brought me in as VP of sales and marketing. And I now have to build a sales organization. And I'm like, well, crap. I don't know how to do this. So I literally pulled my Xerox binder off the shelf, started looking through it. And I'm like, okay, here's my blueprint. So, it whether I knew it or not, it was an incredible education and foundation for me to build from.
That's funny because that was going to be my next question was, did any of that initial program carry over years later when you made the jump from practitioner to trainer?
I actually don't consider myself a trainer, right? Like I'm a sales professional who happens to train. I'm okay at transitioning like knowledge to people, so in getting them to get it. But my passion is sales. And so, I also have, I think, a relatively unique background in the sense that my dad was an electrical engineer and my mom was an artist. So my mom has 2 master's degree in art and art education. My dad has a PhD in electrical engineering. And so I have both the science and the art side of me. So I can, the art side, my mom is insanely empathetic, understands how to read people. But my dad, very detail oriented, as far as structure. So I bring those 2 combinations to the table. And I think that allowed me to kind of create structure that could be transferred to other people. So I wasn't just the artist in sales. Like I only think that probably like 5% of our population are like those natural born sales professionals. And when I say that, all the right ways, like not the douchey ones, right? But like the people that just, when they walk in a room, everybody's like gravitates towards them. They know how to, they know how to connect with people. They know how to read people. They know spend their time. Like I honestly think it's like 5% of our population. I'm not one of them. I'm more of a scientist. I'm more of a like, okay, how do I process this out so I can do this and then layer my art on top of it? So I think the Xerox gave me the frameworks for me to kind of build from. But I already had that kind of, okay, I need to be very structured here, task oriented, everything. So I'm very organized, which my COO always tells me is just an anomaly. She's like, you're a freak, because not too many sales reps are that detail oriented and can carry a conversation.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it's interesting too, you mentioned the electrical engineering and the engineering mindset and the systems mindset. I've talked to a few consultants and that's come up more than you would think. People that were, in sales, had a passion for sales and were sales leaders, and then transition either, in your case, to something like, okay, I'm going to take these systems and layer them on my empathy and kind of create a trading framework. Or from the other side, they're looking at systems from the outside, advising, more of a CRO type go-to-market role, that kind of thing. So definitely a lot of transfer there, which is fascinating. So I know we're going to talk a lot about AI. We were chatting a little bit before the show, and that's on everyone's mind these days. So I want to get into that, but I want to start with a particular lens on it, because I think you and I are going to have a lot of agreement on this point that as we take off in the age of AI, there's a lot of tremendous things happening there. There are tremendous gains to be had. And at the same time, sometimes the fundamentals are getting lost.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to hear your perspective, sir. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think the fundamentals were lost far before AI showed up. I did a presentation at Pavilion, which is a CRO group, and the keynote that I did for them was called Anything But Predictable. And the idea was that as much money as I've made off the predictable revenue model, right? I mean, Salesforce was my biggest client. I trained every single sales rep at Salesforce.com from 2010 to 2018. Okay. So the SDR, BDR, AE thing. And context-wise, this is mainly the SaaS and the tech industry that I'm talking about here, but it's bled through everybody else as well. I personally think that looking back on it, I think predictable revenue and the segmentation of roles ruined sales because it over-scienced it. And my keynote, I positioned 2010 to 2022 as the golden age of sales. I'm sorry, it's rough to hear for some people, but I tell them, if you got into sales, tech sales after 2010, sorry. Hadn't been that hard. I mean, it was the golden age. I mean, money was free, grow at all costs. I mean, we were able to blast out template shitty emails and cadences and set up and disco calls with anybody with a pulse, don't ask Bant questions, drone through ridiculous canned demos and offer a massive discount. Like that was sales for a solid 10 to 15 years. And it was tolerated because money was free. Nobody cared. You know what I mean? They cared, but not really. And, we heard that, by the time somebody comes to us, they're already 60 to 70% through the sales process, right? Yeah, those are for inbound, right? Everybody kind of misused that quote to say everybody's already that far. It's not true. It was like when people came inbound. But now with AI, it's actually everybody. Because as soon as I find something that I think is somewhat interesting, say a SDR cold calls me or whatever it is, like, yeah, sure, let's set up that call in a couple of days. Within 5 minutes before I jump on that call, I can find out everything I need to know. And so what we did was, my humble opinion is we over-scienced sales in those years. We taught these sales professionals on process, on tech, on what, and we didn't really teach them the art. And I'm a science guy when it comes to sales and science and art. It's obviously both. I'm personally one who thinks it should be a little bit more of a science because the science lays the foundation for that art to be more effective. But the problem is we've way over scienced it at this point, and there's almost no art left. And you layer on COVID and how that we're all living in this world, like everything feels transactional because before that, I was able to go into your office. I was able to sit down with you. I was able to read your body language. I was able to look around the office and find ways to relate to you. You know what I mean? And you could develop rapport, you could develop relationship, but now it's 30 minutes on, off. Sorry, pal, my blurred background, you can't connect with anything. Give me something, go. And we've kind of indoctrinated this whole new generation of sales professionals into that model. And now that model, like we've turned them into robots and now they're getting replaced by robots.
Fair enough. Yeah. No, I mean, it's a way to end, right? Especially right with the SDR roles. And I think it's kind of fascinating to talk about, turning into robots and being replaced by robots. I was looking back at the last 7 years of episodes we did talking about AI, right? Every time someone mentioned AI, of course, using AI,
Sure.
Ironically or not ironically, right?
Yeah.
Going back to look at it, and there's one theme that plays out again and again, which is augmentation, not replacement.
Yep. Augmentation, not automation, is what I keep saying. Yeah.
However, if you look at it, what people mean by the word augmentation has changed markedly every 2 years, which I found kind of hilarious, right? At first it was like, oh, it's the busy work. Then it's the, low-level content creation tasks.
Right.
And it's, we can set the LLMs loose and clean data, forecasting, lead scoring, get that stuff out of the way. And then in the last 2 years, augmentation has come to be augmentation of roles, which in some cases means replacement. So I say all that to say, if we are turning people into robots or people have been turned into robots and they're being replaced by them, what should sales leaders do to sort of bring teams back around where that the framework is still there, right? The science, the tools are still there, but that human empathy is accented in a way where it becomes vital.
It's tough, especially in the high growth, still pressure to go, right? Coaching is the number one thing that a manager should do, but it's the last thing they do, right? Because they don't have time, they don't know how to do it. So I think, first of all, I think it goes all the way back to what I think is the number one thing you need in order to be truly successful in sales, which is a belief in what you do. Like, I think we have to recenter on values, on like, why does what we do matter, right? So bring customers in to have the conversation, not just a case study that you can read on the website, but like have a customer come in and talk about like the difference that you make. Because when I got my DeWalt, Xerox, started a company, grew that company, sold it to Staples, and then Staples fired me. And, they offered me another position, but they fired me. And so I had kind of this crisis of conscience because I had been an IT services guy for 7 years, right? And I had no plan B. And so when I had never been fired before. So when I got fired, I'm like, oh my God, like, crap. Like, what do I do now? Like, am I an IT services guy? Is that what I am? I'm like, I don't even like computers. Like it just, that. So my wife was the one who kind of helped me out with this. She's like, all right, let's take a step back. Let's think about all the different, jobs you've had and why were you one of the best reps at every one of these jobs? She's like, so let's talk about DeWalt. Like, why were you one of the best reps at DeWalt? I'm like, I don't know. DeWalt power tools are pretty cool. You know what I mean? It's like, it was pretty easy for me to talk about them. I like them. They're right. She's like, okay, well, what about Xerox? I was like, I don't know. I mean, Xerox was the best copier. I don't care about copiers, but they were the best in the industry. You know what I mean? I genuinely believe that. And then Thrive, Mike, why were we the fastest growing company in Massachusetts? Why did we beat all of our competitors? It wasn't because I cared about the technology. I just believed that my engineers and our process was better than anybody else's. So then it dawned on me, it didn't matter what I sold. It mattered that I believed in what I sold. And I think there's a missing point there because a lot of people are just getting jobs to get jobs. And I get it in a market where it's tough to get a job, like you're just, hey, whatever, who's ever going to pay my bills? But when you can find a job that what you do makes a difference and you connect with that, well, now all of a sudden it's a lot more authentic. So I call it the give a shit factor. It's the one thing AI can't do. It can't give a shit, right? It can pretend to make it feel really good, but it genuinely can't. And I think that authenticity is going to be something. So I think it's getting back to why are we doing this? Like what difference do we make and who do we make it for? And by the way, Who do we not make it for? We're not for everybody. This is who we're for. So going through that process, and I think customer advisory boards or having customers come in and talk to the team so they can see the person, not the persona that they're going after. I think, there's a million ways you can take training on EQ and all this other stuff, which is really hard to address if you don't, if you're not empathetic, it's really hard for me to make you empathetic. You know what I mean? Like if you don't understand what empathy is, I can show you what empathy is, but it's hard to get you to be empathetic. But I think what we can do is create an environment of learning and of growing and experimenting. And so I recommend everybody, forget about training or whatever, like what I think every company should do is turn their sales org into a sales lab. So you know how like engineers have hackathons, right? Where they pick something and they kind of nerd out on it for a little while and then they figure out a solution to it. I think every sales org, not just sales org, GTM org should do the same thing. So for instance, get together every week, right? Couple hours, Friday, lunch and learn, beer and pizza, right? Whether it's remote or on-site. Pick any aspect of the GTM motion, okay? Preparing for meetings, updating CRM, follow-ups, writing proposals, whatever it is. The part that is not the best. You know what I mean? Something that you're like, this needs to be better. Then you break up teams in like 4 or 5 people and you put like an SDR with an AE, so a junior rep with a senior rep. You bring in a marketing person into that. You get an ops person in there, maybe even an engineer, right? Maybe somebody so you get that group working together and you give them a framework and you say, okay, here's the problem we're trying to solve. Now you have an hour and go figure out a better solution for this. Now you can either use your existing systems because, we really rarely get the most out of our existing systems, or you can use AI to create something, whatever it is, but you give them that framework. And then at the end of that hour, each team lead stands up and presents their solution. Everybody kind of votes on which one they like best. And then you implement that the next week. And then you keep iterating and iterating and iterate. Like you just do that constantly. And you do the same thing when it comes to like prospecting, right? You create sequences with the team. You don't give them to them, pick a persona, pick an industry. Everybody does some research, figure out what that person cares about, map out a multi-touch contact strategy, and then break up into teams. One team does all email, one team does email plus phone, one team does email plus video, one team does, right? And then you test variables to see what works. So if you get into this kind of A/B split test mentality, this agile framework, and you can start collectively using the team to execute on this, I think what happens inherently is teamwork improves, learning improves, the give a shit factor improves because some people care more than others, and those others that don't care will see the people that do and get inspired by them maybe. So I think that's the only way I see sales orgs surviving is if like we figure out a way to really truly work together. Everybody's silos and stuff. Like we gotta work together here and start seeing it from every perspective, or else we're gonna get absolutely replaced.
I love this so much because it's so timely. Because I'm getting this from you and the sales perspective of it. And then I talked to, I don't know if you're familiar, Matt Hines earlier today on the podcast marketing side of it.
Yeah.
And he brought up the same thing through a slightly different lens. He was talking about this, a recent Gartner survey that was talking about collaboration drag and the barrier to exactly what you described, right? About getting these people like in a room when they collaborate with each other. I think it was something like 84% of marketers experience a high collaboration drag. And when that goes across the GTM team, 34% less likely to hit revenue targets.
And there's so much to learn right now. And this is also why one more thing, like the top-down decision-making at this point is just stupid. Like any leader right now who thinks they're the smart kid in the room, shut up. You're going to fail. You're not that smart. Okay. Okay. Maybe Steve Jobs, good for you. You know what I mean? We could all argue about Elon and how crazy he is, but okay. Right. But right now things are moving so fast that if you go through the traditional decision-making process of identifying a problem, going out and evaluating vendors to fix the problem, deciding on that vendor, implementing that, any real fundamental system change in product or that you're implementing at this point, you're 6 to 9 months out minimum of implementation and in adoption, right? Can you tell me what this world's going to look like in 6 to 9 months? I have no idea. Maybe next week I can tell you what this world's going to look like. 6 to 9 months from now, anybody who's saying that they know what this world is going to look like in a year is out of their mind. There is just no way. And so that's why it's like short sprints, it's agile frameworks, it's those type of things, and it's collective. Watching the C-level executives sit in those collaboration meetings with you because they're curious and they're learning. I love these CEOs who are, AI, but they don't even know how to turn on ChatGPT. You know what I mean? They're telling their whole team, figure out this AI shit. But then when they tell their secretary or whoever to go do something for them as opposed to diving in and learning it, right? So that, leading by example, but leading by example almost in a flat level organization as opposed to the standard hierarchy is, my personal opinion, the only thing I'm going to see, I think is going to work moving forward.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go next, was to say that, when you talk about silos, when you talk about collaboration, I think there is value to getting executives from different functions in a room. What I loved about what you were describing was it is in the weeds.
Yeah.
It is the tactical workflows. And if you take all of those executives and you put them in front of a computer and say, do X, Y, Z, they are not going to have the slightest hint of how to do that 9 out of 10 times. There are exceptions.
Yeah.
Size of business, role, tenure, all that good stuff, right? But yeah, most of the time, like, it is in the weeds and it is a flat organizational structure, at least to problem solving, right? At least when you iterate on a process and you're going to have to bring tools and different expertise to bear within a sprint cycle.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic way to go about it.
It's like the VP of sales who tells their reps to make cold calls, but hasn't made a cold call in the past 30 years and never even takes cold calls when they get them. You know what I mean? Like that's what always cracks me up. Like when I make cold calls sometimes, like I'll pick up a phone from a CE, like a VP of sales. Oh, this is crap. I'm like, wait a minute. You don't take cold calls, huh? Like this is, how'd you get my number? It's like, let me ask, does your team make cold calls? Well, yeah. What the fuck is wrong with you? You know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't you use this as like basically as research? You know what I mean? Like I pick up every call that hits me because I'm like, okay, what's that approach? Is it good? Do I like it? All right, let me use it. So there's a hypocrisy to a lot of the leadership out there of like, do what I say, not what I do. And I think that has to change, especially, and now we can layer on the generational components of this. Whereas, the younger generation has no tolerance for being told what to do. You know what I mean? Even though they need to be told what to do in a lot of ways, at least from a structural standpoint, like being like barked at and given orders to do things is not the way this generation. Now, me, on the other hand, like when I was growing up in sales, give me my territory, give me my quota, and please get the hell out of my way. I don't need any of this like collaboration crap. Like I'm going to go nail it. I'm going to make as much money as I possibly can. Please get out of my way. That's different now. It's just culturally we're different. I think, in some ways it's good, some ways it's bad because we've lost that kind of independence and that drive and but the collaboration is even better. So.
No, I think you're right in a lot of ways there. So I want to pull on the AI thread just a little bit more, and going back to, tools and skills. I mean, I think it was Salesforce's Data Sales showing that most reps were trained on tools, not skills.
Yep.
Makes sense. And 88% are using AI, but it's mostly, that admin work, right? Yeah. So I guess I'll stop there and say, so what does that tell you at scale about how most sales teams are approaching AI?
I don't think most sales teams know what the hell to do right now. I don't think most organizations. I mean, there was a study that came out recently. The MIT it was last year. That 84% of corporate AI initiatives fail. Right? See, I think the number's even higher than that because again, things move so fast. And I think AI is fantastic for individuals. Like for me as a solopreneur, oh my God, I can build whatever I want to build. I can do whatever I want to do. But once you get into an org, and there's security protocol, there's quote unquote IP, which I think is a joke, but let's put it there that people care about it. That there are secrets with your, like, no, there's no secrets anymore. Just anybody listening. Like if I want to find out something about your business, I'll find something about your business. So don't be worried about your team putting secret special sauce on the platform that everybody else is going to be able to do. But that's the mentality. And I get it. Again, I'm not a cybersecurity expert. I am not somebody, any of that. So that's the problem. Is that it's great for individuals and some are using it way better than others to do very efficient things with what they do. But the systematic how you run this across your org is really hard, just like anything else. I mean, forget about AI for a second. Pick any SaaS product that has been implemented in the past 10 years. What's the adoption? 10, 20, 30% at most? So it's the same thing. And those are actually standardized. You know what I mean? Those SaaS platforms is like, yep, here's outreach, here's sales up. You know what I mean? Like everybody's using it. And most people use this much of it or do it just because they're told they're supposed to, And so I think that's the difficulty here is that the governance of it, which is why I think like doing it in a intentional way with groups to identify what works together so that we can share best practices and see, like, I on another note of like, okay, you don't have to do the sales lab scenario there, hackathon thing. What you could do though is once a week, pick said rep on your team who's doing something really well with AI, whether it's, preparing for meeting, whatever it might be, just like back in the day, or not even still today. I guarantee you there are or people in an organization that use the hell out of Sales Navigator and are like, have their saved searches, have their triggers, have their account IQ, and like are just like, holy smokes, right? And there's 90% of the sales team that doesn't use it even remotely close to that. So get that kid who's awesome at that thing to do a lunch and learn on a Friday, open up their laptop, say, hey, everybody, come in, everybody bring their laptops, log in, make sure you have Sales Navigator up. I'm going to show you step by step how I do what I do. And now it's like, oh, wow, that rep who's killing it over there, that's how okay, maybe I should do this. And if you're going to walk me through how to do this, but it's not a corporate initiative. You have to do this. It's, I'm insanely productive with this. Let me now show you everybody else how to do it. And then same thing with AI. Look how I prepare for meetings. I go in and this is the prompt that I use, and look at the brief that I have. It's like, oh, everybody's like, wow. I mean, that's the half the value I bring when it comes to training at this point. Is I wake people up to the possibilities of AI and get them out of like using it basically as Google. You know what I mean? And I'm like, do you all realize like the power, like, old dogs like me, right? And they're like, oh yeah, this AI stuff's adorable, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, guys, can I show you something? And they'll be like, what? I'll be like, and I'll just turn on my microphone on my laptop and I'll be like, hey, could you do me a favor? I'm prepared for a meeting. I don't even remember what the name of the company is, but it's Thursday at 3:00, I think. Could you go into my calendar and go do deep research on that person in that industry and go into my CRM and see if there's any communication between them? And I just need to know the top trends of the industry and what's happening. By the way, grab their 10K annual report and analyze that and figure out how I can and come up with a couple of hypotheses of how I can help them and some questions I should probably ask. And then a brief agenda that I could probably run them with. Could you just put that together for me? And I literally like throw up into the microphone, like not even a structured thought. You know what I mean? And I purposely back up on myself. I'm like, oh, never mind. No, I don't want to do that. I want to do this instead, right? And I just blah. And I'm like, guys, hold on a second. And the screen, and you see it, like you see it building and doing this other, and all of a sudden, bing, it produces like this 2-page beautiful prep with all the information I could possibly need, context of every conversation I've had. And you see the eyes go, well, what? I'm like, yeah, guys, I know you think it's adorable, but I'm going to run over you. If I'm your competition, I'm going to smoke you because I'm going to come into that meeting so prepared, so immediately able to add value. And your little relationship stuff, that's adorable. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you're a fisherman? So am I. Oh, you like to golf? So do I. None of that matters anymore, old man, because I can bring so much value without even thinking about it. And by that way, that 22-year-old can do the same thing. Now, they might not be able to hang in that conversation once they get in there, but half the battle's getting that conversation. So it's the wake up of like, it's kind of like me when about 3 weeks ago, I moved from ChatGPT to Claude and then Claude Cowork. Like, holy shit, like shut my mouth. I did a blog post about 3 weeks ago and it was when I did it over the weekend and it was the Matrix, I know Kung Fu.
Yep. Welcome to the new frontier.
I literally woke up. I was like, oh my God, I know Kung Fu. And you know how like after he wakes up and then Tank's like, I've never seen somebody ingest so much information. And like, that was me for the past like 3 weeks. I'm like, oh my God. What can I do? And so, and I'm now like kind of not productive because I'm doing more than I absolutely should, which is the trap of it. Right. But I think it's just you got to get in this game because this is just going to get more. I mean, my theory is I think in the next 3 to 5 years, white collar workers I don't know if there's even going to be there's going to be a very small fraction of white collar workers that are going to be necessary unless the compute power necessary to run these agents outweighs the cost of a human. That's my only hope, is that the cost of all these data centers, of all this compute power running is eventually like, great efficiencies, but then all of a sudden it's going to be like every agent's going to cost, $200,000 a year to run because it's doing this. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, humans are actually cheaper now for this. So there is hope of kind of almost a self-sealing of this based on how it is progressing and how much data it's using and how much power it's using and how expensive that's going to be. So I think that's the saving grace of this. But if resources were unlimited, I don't know. I mean, as a solopreneur, I look at it this way. I don't think I'll ever hire another person again in my life. I've gone through that. Personally, I'm just at a stage of my life I don't want to do it. But I also don't think I'll ever deal with another sales rep to buy a product because I can educate myself so much. That's why when people say like, all these tools coming after sales reps, I'm not worried about that, quite frankly. I'm worried about when the client wakes up and realizes they don't need us because most sales reps are just friction. The sales process gives a shit about your sales process, your sales stages. What stage am I in now? Do I have to wait another week to get a SE to give me an actual demo here? Or can I go into Claude and say, hey, could you run me a quick demo on what this and how does this align with my business strategy and what are some of the things I should be even paying attention to? And by the way, can I build this myself based on what I know here? Or is this something I should do because of the socks and all that other stuff? Like, it's not even there's no comparison.
It could be future state. I want to rein us in just a little bit because there are 2 points that you said there that I really piqued my interest. And I think a lot of our listeners are going to dive into too. One was the distinction, right? At what point, like, why do I need 10 user seats, right? I can have one agent run this, but at some point, perhaps, right? And you see this in AI startups already, right? It's like they're having contests for who can use the most AI and just like massive bills they're racking up on top of that. At some point, there might be a self-limiting ceiling to your point, right? Of like, hey, it's going to be more costly, like the resource impact, the financial impact to actually run all these agents than it is to have people do it. So that could be one, and I really want to come back to that and unpack that more. But first, I want to go back to something that you said, John, about how, you kind of just throw up into the microphone, I need this, maybe I don't want that, I don't need this, and then watch their eyes go to the size of hubcaps. So you get this beautiful output that you can use to get into any call. Like anyone coming out can get into that call. And then I was fascinated by this, particularly you said something else. They might not be able to hang in the conversation, but they can get into it. And I'm thinking, if I'm a sales leader, my ears are going to, boop, like a bat there. So what's that next step to help them hang in that conversation?
Well, this goes back to the curiosity and getting them engaged, right? Of like the why behind this. This is why, I do training on all that. Like I'm actually going through this right now because going back to the fundamentals, right? So I have all this recorded content of my programs, Filling the Funnel, Driving to Close. And I've always positioned it as the foundation, right? So, okay, cool. And the why behind the output, because AI can produce a great email, right? But do you understand the why behind it? Like ideal customer profile, for instance. And by the way, this isn't just AI. This is organizations, how we again over process the whole thing. Ideal customer profile. Most reps get their list and they just start calling the list. And the list is some Zoom info, industry size, number of locations, go. Right? Here's your list. It's like, well, do you know why you're calling into that list? Do you know why? And by the way, there's tiers. There's really good ICP, there's average, and there's crappy ones. Do you know what you're looking for and why you're looking for that? So like starting with the why, right? Like, okay, let's learn about ideal customer profile. So when we take this AI and we put it on our ideal customer profile to produce all that information for us, we know why these companies are good fits for us. Personas. Okay, great. Do you know, a CIO, great. Here's your value proposition to a CIO. Do you know the difference between a CIO and a CTO? Do you know the difference between a CTO's priorities in healthcare versus a CTO's priorities in manufacturing? Do you understand that? Most reps couldn't tell. I mean, look, and I say this because I was that rep, right? I sold IT services for a large portion of my career. And I remember vividly standing in front of a group of executives when I was doing this pitch one time. And midway through, one of the guys goes, hey, John, real quick, before we keep going here, do you know what the difference between a CTO and a CIO is? And I was, and I didn't. I was like, the acronym, right? And he's like, you fucking sales reps are all the same, right? He's like, all right, keep going. I was like, this conversation's over, isn't it? He's like, no, you can keep going. I'm like, I think I'll leave. So my point is like learning that, right? The why behind these things. One more example. Mergers and we talk about prospecting, trigger events, right? Oh, merger and acquisition is a great trigger event. Why? Have you ever been through a merger and acquisition? Have you ever been a CRO of a $10 million company that got by a $20 billion organization and now has to integrate that into it? Do you know what they're going through? Can you empathize with them? You can't because you've never been through it, but can you at least sympathize with them by understanding a little bit more about that? And by the way, it's never been easier to do it because now all you have to do is help me understand what a CTO in healthcare goes through when they go through a merger and acquisition. This is a company that's going through, what are the stages of that? What does that mean? Why do they care? Why is it important to them? How do they get paid? How do they make money? How do they align with the business, right? It's never been easier if you're curious. And that's, I think, the superpower of the future is curiosity. If you are curious, genuinely curious, like I want to learn about this. I want to learn about people. I want to learn about your problems. I want to learn about stuff before I even walk in the door with you. So I can skip look, I think some 3 most insulting things you can say to anybody right now. Tell me about your business. Tell me about your priorities and what keeps you up at night. Those are the 3 worst things, most insulting things I think you can say. Because I can learn everything about your business in about 5 seconds flat. I can figure out what or at least what people like you priorities are. And I can figure out and I can ask what would keep somebody like this up at night. And I can come in with more of a hypothesis as opposed to solution selling and asking a bunch of generic questions and then giving you my pitch. So I think that's kind of what we have to get back to is we have to get back to curiosity. Leaders have to, I've been searching for the answer to, are you naturally born curious or can you develop curiosity, right? And I think I've come to the conclusion that like genuine curiosity across the board, I think is a nature, not nurture thing. I think some of us are just born more curious than others. But I think you can become curious if and only if you are interested in something. Because once you're interested, now I want to learn more about it. So example, I would have my reps tier out their accounts, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, get their top 25 accounts based on demographic criteria and all that other stuff. But before I would let them prospect into those accounts, I would say, all right, I need you to go back and I need you to find out the reason. Why do you personally want to work with that company? What about them outside of they fit our profile and you can make money off of them? What about them? They got good values? Do you like their leadership? Do you think their product is really cool? Like, what is it? Because once you can make the connection of like, ooh, like I actually am interested in this company. I want to work with this company because I think we can help. B, they got something cool. Right? Well, now all of a sudden, all your messaging becomes a lot more authentic. You know what I mean? Your approach, you start to care. You ask questions because you're curious about them, not because they're on a list of your banter, your medic shit. So I think we got to get back to that.
I think curiosity is something that trying to think which side of this to tackle first, because I think it's the anecdote to everything we've been talking about in a way. When you think about AI adoption, right? I think, some people are freaked out by it. Some people don't understand what it's going to do for them. Some people are trapped in I need the best prompt to do X, Y, Z. Yep. Wherever you are at in that journey, I think if you're curious about it, 1, that opens the gate. But then 2, like you said, why do you want to learn it? Maybe you don't want to learn it for your job. Yeah. Maybe you're threatened by it for your job. Maybe you don't like what it's doing to your job. Apply it to something that you're passionate about outside of that. Yeah. That was Matt's advice earlier, and that really stuck with me because I'm like, oh, wait, what a great way to start learning the systems, what it can do something passionate, remove the I don't know what I don't know about it, and then you can apply it or not apply it. Yep. I think the same thing goes back to the sales skills, why you want to work with a company, and also, why would you go after this company? Like, really, what's the human side of it, right? It's all about being curious. So,
and it goes back to the stop with the process, stop with the tech, stop with the let's unplug for a minute and let's have this real conversation of who gives a shit. You know what I mean? Like, why does our product features, functions, nobody cares? What difference do we make for people? That's why I think it's so important not to have a case study. I think it's so important. It's amazing to me how few companies take advantage of their customers' resources. And I say this, we all go after personas. We all go out, we take educated guesses on what these people care about. You know what I mean? We do our homework, but most companies have clients that obviously fit the exact profile of who we go after. So why not have them jump into a sales meeting once a week and let the sales team ask them some questions? Hey, what kind of difference do we make? Can we stop? If somebody were to ask you what value we bring to the table for you, could you in normal words, what would you say? Forget about our marketing, forget about our value prop. For you personally, what were you doing before? And now what are you doing now? And what difference did our solution make for you? And then you hear somebody oh man, I was working until 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock every single night. I was missing my kids' birthdays and doing this. But after we implemented your stuff, I was able to cut that in half. And now I get to go to every baseball. You know what I mean? Oh, right? Now it's I'm not selling somebody a product so I can get an ROI. I'm selling somebody a solution so they can spend more time with their kids. I'm selling somebody a solution so that they can actually get to the next stage of their career. I'm selling something to somebody that makes a difference. Again, and by the way, you don't have to love the product. I didn't love copiers. but I genuinely like, here's one. I sold state and local government. You know, one of them is in Massachusetts that was my client. It was the Treasury. Guess what? Every single check you get in the mail in Massachusetts came through my machines. I paid almost everybody in Massachusetts in my mind. I was able to make sure that paycheck got in the mail so that you could pay your bills. That's what I did. I didn't sell copiers. I sold the output of those copiers. And that's, by the way, that's a huge theme right now. It's like going back to the SaaS world, like licenses versus outputs. We're moving to an output-driven payment structure. This per seat license stuff is going away fast. So that's like, we have to focus on outcomes.
Absolutely. And yeah, I got to come down on the personal value in sales. I think one of the most absolutely overlooked aspects of it. And like you said, right, ROI is one thing. You can throw ROI at everything all day long, but if it's someone that can leave the office before 10 p.m. at night, right? If you're making a difference in someone's life, that really does make a change.
Here's something. I'm actually working on this right now. Is something to give people. I think everybody needs to go through, I think right now is an important time to do this too. I think everybody needs to go through the value exercise, like the core value exercise, where they sit down and really think through what matters to them, right? And I don't mean just like a bunch of words and select the words, but like thinking through, right? Because when I, got fired and my dad died and I was like in this weird spot and I was like kind of just stuck. And, I had always known about core values and, I had these 12 personal guidelines to success based on Think and Grow Rich and all that fun stuff that I did early in my career. But I never really like kind of nailed down, like, what do I genuinely value? When I went through the exercise, it was an eye-opening exercise for me because I started to really hone in on what was important to me and why it was important to me. And then really how I lived it or I didn't. And once I had that, my lens became so much more clear. Because what I did after I really was clear on my core values, I started looking for opportunities that aligned with them, people that aligned with them. And when you can align on core values, you can do some incredible things. But if you and I, for instance, if our core values were completely misaligned, we'll just tear each other apart. You know what I mean? Like we'll just argue and tear each other apart. I mean, we can macro this out to what's happening in politics right now, but that's a different story. But if you and I have like similar core values, then we can argue and we can debate, but we'll ultimately come to a place of respect and let's move forward with this. So I think that is an opportunity for people to kind of take a step back and say, hold on a second, what do I actually care about? And does the company and the product and the things that I'm doing align with those? Because if they do, you will go through the moon as far as results and everything else. But if they don't, you are going to just struggle through that position. You're probably not going to be that successful doing it. And you're probably going to hate every morning you wake up to do it. And look, money is important. We have to pay bills. Okay. But Jesus, you know what I mean? Like there's sometimes where you just gotta, like, you ever seen Up in the Air with George Clooney?
Yes.
Remember and the guy who does the State Farm commercials, remember when he fires him? And he asks him, he's like, when did they pay you to give up on your goals? Or how much did they pay you to give up on your goals? And he was like, $34,000 a year. He's like, I watch guys like you spend their entire lives and never, you know what I mean? And just like go through the motions. He's like, you have an opportunity here. And for a lot of people out there listening who might have just gotten laid off because AI is coming for them, right? Or, looking for a job and being like, oh, woe is me. I've sent out 100 resumes and I haven't gotten a job. There's an opportunity right now. And AI is going to present that opportunity better than I've ever seen for anybody. I am insanely optimistic for creators right now, for people who are willing to get their hands dirty and creators, because you can create and build whatever you want. There are zero limitations at this point if you are curious enough to go after it. On the other hand, I am insanely pessimistic for the status quo people, the people who are just want to get by, just want to do their thing. I feel bad for them because I wish that we still lived in a world where that was going to be okay. Unfortunately, it's just not. And you can either bitch and moan about it and complain about it and wait for it to smack you in the face, or you can get up and realize for $20 a month, I can do almost anything I want to do. I can build almost anything I want to build. I can create an app with my daughter, like, so to your point, like on getting interested in things, like I freaked my daughter and my wife out 2 years ago when ChatGPT. I was like, oh my God, we got to do this. This is going to be crazy. And like both of them, like, get away from me, right? My mistake, right? I went, how do I pull them back into this? So like my daughter, I'm finding ways of like, what can we do to create things that she's interested in, right? So we built an app on Replit the other day on like, because she was looking at colleges. She's 15 years old and we're trying to figure out how to look at colleges. And so we built an app where she helps her figure out what she wants to do and what careers possibilities and what majors and then what colleges based on criteria. And now she has this thing. You know what I mean? Like, and we work together on it. And she's like, this is pretty cool. I'm like, I know. If you can think it, you can do it. And it's just like, early days, my dad loved him to death. He's passed away, but he's an engineer and he's one of those like typical engineers, right? And he always was that, well, I invented that before so-and-so did, like a laundry list of things that my dad invented before somebody else did, right? And I eventually was like, Dad, look, I'll tell you the same thing somebody told me. Ideas are like assholes. Everybody's got them. The reason that person is successful is because they did it. They jumped in. They didn't sit there and analyze it for, 10 times over. They didn't sit there and lament about how great their idea was on a whiteboard. They did it. And they failed, by the way, probably 50 times before it actually popped. But they did it. And I think now is the time for action. Now is the time for people to just do something. And you'll figure it out along the way because it's never been easier if you're just curious enough to open up that microphone and start talking to this thing.
I wonder if I can get sponsored by Anthropic. Anthropic, if you're listening, I feel like there have been enough plugs in this show and the last one.
I'm on the verge. I'm this close. I'm actually talking to them right now to sponsor because it is that like holy smokes. You know what I mean? Like, really is.
For sure. And public service announcement about Up in the Air. If you did just get laid off, I don't know if I recommend that movie. It's either going to go one of two ways. It's going to be a strong reaction to that.
Yeah.
So
it's actually a sad movie. It was for me because I was traveling. Like the saddest award I've ever gotten is because before COVID hit, so I got the Million Mile Club on United. It was like me when George Clooney was up. He's like the 10 million mile thing, and the guy comes out and he's just depressed because he's got no life and he realizes it. Like that was thankfully I had a wife and daughter in the whole thing, but this was like the saddest award I've ever gotten.
Oh no!
So it's actually a really sad movie at the end of the day, of like for him specifically. But it also, by the way, it's also a beautiful example of the human connection. Because remember, she was trying to automate, like, everybody was going to get fired through a computer, and it was a process, and it was super efficient, and then somebody killed, you know what I mean? I don't want to, whatever, but like there were some really bad things that happened because they over-scienced the process of firing people. And George sat in front of that guy and said, there's an opportunity here. I've seen like guys like you, and you saw the guy's mind change because of the human connection, because of the empathy, because of the give a shit factor. And that's what I think we can hold on to.
Yeah, good point. We've come full circle.
Yeah.
And we've come to the end of the podcast. And John, there are two questions that we ask every guest. Yep. And the first, I feel like we've already covered it, but I'll ask you for a one-liner on it, which is, we're recording this 2026, fast forward 5 years out. What's one big shift? I know you said you can't predict the next 6 months. I'm asking you for the next 5 years here. What's just one big shift coming for just say B2B sales that not a lot of people are talking about right now?
The buyer. That's the shift that is going to fundamentally change, is when the buyer doesn't need us. I think the biggest shift, and it will happen, is when AI starts buying things. Not even the human on the other end buying things with AI. When I'm as the leader, say, go analyze my strategy plan, go evaluate the vendors, send out an RFP to the top 3 vendors in this area that fit this thing, and then get their responses and help me make a decision. And then I'll be the last one. Like, that's the scary part to me. That's the one when sales reps need to fundamentally change their approach, because it's not going to be about helping, guiding somebody through the sales process anymore. It's going to be trying to figure out where we can add value in their buying process. And sales stages, I think, are going to be irrelevant in the future. So there's a hot take for you. I think sales stages will be irrelevant in the next 5 years.
Yeah, there we go. That's a great soundbite. And no, I think you're right. I think you're right. That could be a very possible future. I was at a conference a few years back, and they shared an example like that. And it was like two people, quote unquote, talking on a call, but then it was quickly like, oh, you're an AI, I'm an AI. And then they ran the buying and selling exercise all themselves. Yep. Of course, it was for hotel rooms.
Sure, but whatever
stakes, but
they negotiate better than we do. Like I saw two AIs negotiating, and one got a better price than another one, and it got a better than the human did, and it was like, shit, okay, you know. So that I keep saying, as long as there's a human on the other end, we have a chance. Once that human isn't there for us to communicate with, then all bets are off.
Yep, and possibly so. Okay, final question for you. Looking back on your own career, your own journey, if you go back 5, 10, maybe even 15 years into the past, what is one piece of advice you'd give your younger self and why?
Yeah, I go back to what I was saying earlier is science. A/B split test everything. Just like focus, like we all do the activities. We all make the phone calls. We all send the emails, but very few of us pay attention. It's just a pure push. I got to make $50. I got to make $100, like that type of thing. So what I would do is, here's what I always say is, I knew my equation when I was a kid. It was $400 a week, got me 8 meetings a month, got me 4 proposals, got me 2 pieces of closed business, average deal size of $3,500 a month. That was my equation. And I just hammered it because I knew I could do it. Looking back on it, I'd still make 400, but instead of making 400 generic cold calls with a generic elevator pitch, I'd figure out one persona and my value and come up with 4 different approaches to that persona. And I'd make 100, 100, 100, 100, and I would see which one yielded a higher response rate. If I had an email that could go out to 50 people, I would send it out, but I would 25, 25 and tweak the subject line. If I was making cold calls with a message, I would come up with 2 different intros and I would make 20, hey, this is John Barrows, JB Sales. Are you familiar with this? Hey, can I get 30 seconds to tell you why I'm calling before you hang up on me? And I would test which intro got me better into it. I would test and test and test because what worked 6 months ago, what worked 6 weeks ago is not working anymore right now. So if you are not in this agile framework and testing and trying different things, your results aren't going to get better. So I would A/B split test everything I did.
Always be testing. I like it. Great advice. All right, John, well, this has been a lot of fun. If people want to learn more about you, more about JB Sales, where should they go?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Easy is jbarrows.com. That's where you go onto the resources. There's a ton of free stuff, YouTube, Instagram, newsletter, podcast, all the fun stuff. I do training. I do one-on-one coaching for individuals. I do, corporate stuff. And I also am doing some consulting for, CROs who are trying to figure out how to get through this mess as well. So,
all right. Well, thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here, man. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.